Family doesn't mean the same thing where I grew up. Growing up, knowing that you shared the same blood as someone didn't mean that you were safe. And even worse, it didn't mean that you were treated the same. As I look back at my childhood, I see how much the experiences that were lived by my little sisters were a microcosm of how society expected women to act, passively, and less than, based on their gender and age. Around this time, I imagined myself to be around 10, and my youngest sister to be about 5. I had 3 older brothers and 2 younger sisters, but this memory is primarily in my youngest sister. My dad is still alive and runs the household, or at least as much as one can when one doesn't have to work 2 jobs. Our eldest brother, well, we'll call him Rob, was born with a blood clot in his brain, which drastically affected his motor and thinking skills. Severe enough where, despite him being almost 20 years old at the time, he still has the mental capacity of a small child. Oftentimes he would get into fits, for reasons I still do not know, and try and attack our little sister. After the first few times, I would stay with her a lot more than usual. Being the youngest brother, I thought it was my duty to protect them, since I was closest to her age and, older than them. You can tell my older brother was triggered, because his whole face would turn from happy as a baby to pissed. It was also always accompanied by a particular look in his eye. One time he came really close to something bad happening. I remember that I was in my room, playing with Legos. Suddenly I heard a crash, but not from my room. I heard the telltale screams and ran in to see him lunging for my sister's throat. As I said before, his motor skills were particularly not adept. In my mind, it was like seeing Frankenstein lumber towards someone. However, this was a small space, and he still had several pounds on her. It would not be that difficult for this to end in a very bad way. Our parents were out, mom grocery shopping, dad working, so it was just us kids who had to restrain him. I remember the look on my sister's face as I failed to pull my brother off. I remember how our screams joined together until both our older brothers came up and were able to stop the assault. I remember my sister and I held each other in the corner of the room telling her, "It will be alright, this will be the last time." It wasn't. Even more troubling was the frequency. Since at the time we never knew what triggered the attack, our story seemed so unbelievable. Our parents were quick to shy blame away from him, often leave the conversation with, "We will keep an eye out," but not doing anything more. The discipline only came to my sister's side for bringing it up at bad times. What was bad this particular night was how quickly he wrote off the assault, my dad. That same night, he came home and chastised her at the dinner table. She tried to start on what had happened, but this was the dinner table. There was an order to how things were done at the time, and that meant waiting until you were called in. These questions were targeted. Things like, "How was school?" or "Did you finish your chores?" Questions of "How was your day?" or what we were expected to ask of him, not the other way around. And that was supposed to be done first. There just wasn't enough time for everything to be discussed before he would have to take a nap and head out again. This memory shows the huge factor that age plays. According to page 113 of Keywords in Youth Studies, adolescents are perceived as abnormal, easily influenced by peers, corruptible, and immature. This discursive strategy of assigning the other to an inferior time assumes we know everything about them, and that they should be denied co-evalueness, deserving surveillance, temporal discipline, and intervention. This means that those at a younger age are also assigned a differentiating value, one which has a serious connotation on their own agency and free will. The free time that we had was subjected to only having education being seen as important. Other time was seen as wasteful and problematic. There was a status given to those who were older, one that took away from the legitimacy of one's words. After all, even though my older brother had a disability, he was still able to work, and he brought in income. That was something that we needed it. The dinner table scene as well is one where constant belief of the younger sister's words against the innocence seen in the older brother. Since he has age and innocence seen on him over the younger sister, he's the one who believes, while the other one is seen as being tricksy and being mischievous. The problem lies in the violence that is even further seen in this example. According to Beth and Debbie Phillips, up to 8 million American children witnessed domestic violence in 2010. More and more work has been done to define what is domestic violence and how it's caused, keeping in mind that this always varies by different cultural and other practical beliefs. However, Laura Schaffner adds to this by talking about the emotional norms that women are established. On page 123, Laura says, "Girls' femininity has traditionally been associated with being loving, caring, and nurturing, and girls lack permission to express either rage or sexual desire. A century ago, the prevailing gender norm for girls was encompassed in their passivity." The problem with this lies in that girls are seen as supposed to be the docile ones, while boys are given the excuse to being disciplinable, or, boys will be boys. Phrases like these are things that I heard in my childhood, and while not at this particular example, were often excuses that were used when I thought of why things were excusable for his actions. The problem is that these actions are also gendered relationships and are not able to be fixed through only counseling one person. For example, Oloriak Sawade gives an example of issues that come with only one-sided gender work. A project on GBV in South Africa by the Organization Institute of Women's Development in South Africa, or the NISSAA, counsel women who have been abused. It says that when interviewed during a monitoring visit, the women appreciated the counseling, but signaled that although this helped to cope with the situation, it did not change the situation, as men were not being counseled and had no incentive or understanding of how to change their behaviors. What's important about this quote is it talks about how the missed opportunity that comes when we look at things through this gendered lens, by only looking at how we can fix the problem, but not looking at a solution that comes from the issue in the first place.